How's it going, guys? So I wanted to record a little video kind of answering some of the questions that came in on some of the recent videos that I posted, and kind of talking about some of the images that I took in those videos. One of the biggest complaints, or critiques I should say, is that I don't display my images long enough in my vlogs. From my point of view, the reason I'm doing that, the reason I'm not taking up a lot of time with each image, is because my vlogs are not necessarily to show off the photos that I'm taking. It's more about just kind of telling the story of the adventure behind going to that place or taking those photos. I'm not, especially at the time of recording it, I'm not super attached to any of my photos. That's kind of a funny thing about me. I like very few of my photos, actually. Kind of hard on myself in that way, but it's not so much to show off the photos as it is to tell the story behind it. Because sometimes, especially when I'm watching my own videos from a long time ago, the story is more interesting to me than the actual photo. And if you remember, you guys can always go check out my photos if you follow me on Instagram, or go check out my website. That's where the good photos make it. A lot of times I am doing a quick edit of some of my photos just so I can post my video. For that reason, I'm not super attached to a lot of the photos I put in my videos. So, fun fact. But anyways, one of the questions that comes in almost every time I post a video of any kind is, Nick, where do you get your music? And what is the name of this song? And what is the name of this artist? So I was going to quickly answer some of that. Might be boring for some of you, but some of you have been asking, so I was going to address that here. So this song, this has kind of been my anthem for a while. It was I think my very first vlog ever. I ended up using it. This is one that I purchased from premiumbeat.com, and I've used it a bunch of times. I like to try to stay consistent with the music that I choose. That way, you know, those people that have been watching videos for a long time, when they hear a video or when they hear a song that they've seen in so many of my videos, it's a little bit, I don't know, it just has this recurring theme. And I've always liked this song, but I'm struggling more and more to work it into my video edits, because it's not really a great one to put in the middle of a video. So it pretty much only makes it into the end of my videos, and not even all of the end of the videos, only when I'm displaying my images. But it used to be in every single video. This song that you're hearing is kind of my new favorite, just because it kind of matches my loping walking style. So I struggle with music. Like, when it comes to editing my videos, the music is always the part of the video that I stress out the hardest on, because I want the music to be different. You know, I don't want to have the same kind of music through the entire video. I want to have some that's upbeat, some that's like a little bit more relaxed and mellow. And this song, I feel like matches my style. I feel like that's a good tip for anybody that's doing video or doing vlogs, is to try to find music that matches your personal style. There's far too much house music in today's vlogs, and nothing against house music, but it definitely doesn't match me or my style. I think a lot of people throw house music into a vlog just because they don't know what other type of music to put in. I doubt that they actually listen to that kind of music on their own time. So, personal preference, obviously, but this is kind of my newest theme song, I guess. I've been working this one into a lot more videos. You can probably tell from my voice, I'm still a little bit sick from the Faroe Islands. It was a little bit hard on my health, because once I got sick, I had to continue to go out and hike and get wet in the rain and get kind of cold and then get sweaty. It wasn't the best situation for getting sick, and I'm still getting over my cough and my cold. I am getting better though. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about in regards to the Faroe Islands videos that I did was, and there was a lot of chatter kind of in the comments section about this, is the fact that so many of the places that you visit in the Faroe Islands, they're charging a fee to hike on the trails. And I want to talk a little bit about that. I had many interesting conversations with local people about, the thought process behind it. And, as an American in the United States, most of the land that we go visit, it's all public lands. We have like BLM land and national parks and state parks, and it's a lot of it is public land. But in the Faroe Islands, unlike other places like, say, Iceland, it's all private property. So when you're hiking out to a particular viewpoint, you're hiking through someone's pasture, you're hiking through someone's land. And for that reason, the laws can be very different. It's pretty much up to the landowner how access is going to be treated. It's never been a problem before because tourism is a very new thing in the Faroe Islands. It used to be that it was just, your neighbor or a local person that was hiking through your land. Now you have people from around the world in different countries that are unfamiliar with the territory walking on these trails, and there's a whole lot more people doing it. The thought process behind charging fees for a lot of these hikes is several fold. For one thing, as soon as you start to charge a little bit of money for it, it cuts down on the number of people doing it. And I think that's an important point because, a lot of these trails are just dirt paths through an area where it rains a lot and there's a lot of erosion. The trails are getting destroyed, and it's a way of cutting down on the number of people doing it, thus kind of protecting the place. If you have hundreds of thousands of people walking on a trail that is not maintained, it's going to get trashed. And so one part of it is just to protect the area by cutting down on the number of people doing it. Second thing is that money that is collected is actually put towards putting down gravel and putting down rock and actually building a trail that can actually withstand some of that traffic. There's that aspect. And then there's the third aspect of if you're going to walk through my property, I might as well make a buck. I can't really begrudge people for wanting to charge money to have some random tourist walk through their property. The local people, they get to hike those trails for free, as they should, as they always have. But if you're, a tourist from another country, you got to pay a few bucks. My personal opinion on it is that I feel like they're onto something. I don't feel it's a bad thing at all. You're protecting the place. You're actually generating a little bit of income so you can maintain the place because there's not a parks system or anything like that in place to, fund the building of the trails and the maintaining of the trails and all of that stuff. And, the local people, that's going to be their way of actually benefiting from all of this tourism that's happening. You got to remember that tourism is very new in the Faroe Islands. And there's not really an infrastructure in place to deal with that tourism. One of the most common questions that I get asked is the Faroe Islands going to be the new Iceland? And the answer to that is absolutely not. The Iceland has the benefit of it being a direct flight from everywhere. It has the central hub feature where you can get a direct flight from Seattle, from Boston, from all over the place in the United States, as well as all over the place in Europe. And for that reason, it makes it really easy to travel there. Travel to Iceland is more affordable and it's easier than flying into the Faroe Islands. Faroe Islands is not only more expensive to fly into, but it's not a direct flight from anywhere but Copenhagen and maybe one from Glasgow. I don't think even from Glasgow. I think it's just from Copenhagen. There is one from Iceland, but it's like once or twice a week. Much more challenging to get to. Then once you get there, it's much more expensive to be there than even Iceland. Iceland is kind of notorious for being kind of spendy to travel to, and it's way more expensive in the Faroe Islands. And there's just not that infrastructure like I talked about. So I don't think it's going to catch on as much as it did in Iceland. But I do think that it's going to be popular with photographers because it's a very fruitful place to do photography. I'm doing my best to edit out all of my coughs. I'm sick. So I also wanted to take a second to talk about some of the images that I captured there, because we didn't talk much about that in the videos. So let's jump into a few of the images. So the first one, and probably my favorite one from the trip, is this black and white of Mass standing on this cliffside with the cascading cliffs back behind. So we captured this at Kelsoy. He's actually standing between the lighthouse and where we were at kind of at the end of that particular video, where we were standing on that particular point, and he's down on that trail that I mentioned some of the group didn't want to go on. This image, just at the moment I looked at it in Lightroom, I knew this was going to be a black and white, just because, for one thing, the color palette wasn't working. Straight out of camera, the greens were kind of weird. It had all the haziness in the background was very, very blue because it was kind of the middle of the day. The colors just didn't add to it at all. And by going monotone and going black and white, it really draws attention to the difference in contrast between each layer. One of the things I talk a lot about is having depth in a landscape. And black and white is a great way to illustrate that depth, because all you're really noticing is that the closest layer is very dark, very, very black. And then as the cliffs get further away from the camera, they kind of, they cascade into the distance and they get lower and lower contrast. There's just so much going on in this shot. You have everything from, a person for scale, the low clouds on the cliff, the waterfall, the kind of interesting jagged crack in the background. Then you have sea stacks. What I like about this shot is it really illustrates a lot of the different things that make the Faroe Islands unique. And this is probably my favorite shot from the whole trip. I think this shot was shot right around 350 or 400 millimeters. This shot from Kelsoy, if you look down kind of in the area there on the trail by that big rock, that's where he was standing. And if you look way over to the left, the people out on that point, that's where I took that photo from. So obviously this is a little bit later. This is once the sun poked out here. I talked a little bit in the video about how I wanted to try to capture something unique. This composition is definitely not unique. This is kind of the obvious go-to composition that you have when you're out on Kelsoy. This is a 10-shot panorama shot at about 20 millimeters. In post-production, one of the things that I really tried to do is to emphasize the way the light was catching some of those greens and the green grasses on the hillside, bring out the depth. And I also had to correct some of the pancaking that happens. So when you are shooting a panorama with a wide-angle lens, and anything in the middle of that shot is going to get squished because it's a wide-angle lens. That's called pancaking. You're turning mountains into pancakes. So one of the things that I do when I do a vertical composition like this with a wide angle lens is I will basically stretch out the stuff in the center of the frame to correct for that pancaking, to make the stuff that is in the center of the frame actually tall again. You have to be careful not to take that too far, otherwise you go into straight fantasy land, and I try really hard to keep it real in that way. But I did have to do some correction for the wide angle distortion. I like this shot, but it's not my favorite because it's really kind of not original, in my opinion. We got a bunch of great shots from Gaza de Lua. It's this particular valley where you see a lot of the shots of the little village in the background with the waterfall. And we got good shots the first time during the first workshop. We got amazing shots the second time. We got really, really great light for like a couple hours while we were there. So we got these kind of earlier shots where the light is kind of peeking through some of the gap on the horizon. Also got these shots a little bit later on when we got that nice color event. It didn't make it into my videos because, well, the audio sucked. And that's kind of how it goes sometimes. A lot of times I'll be recording a vlog and I think I'm getting all this great content, and if my audio is screwed up, can't use any of it. And that happened at this particular point. But this was probably the most touristy spot on that we went to because it's so easy access. It's free for one thing, and it's about, 200 yards from the road. And so we got down there with our group of 8, and then the tourists flooded in. That we even saw tourists wearing flip-flops, no socks, even though it was cold, in typical tourist fashion. dressed for the conditions. But we got great photos there. These photos I'm not super attached to, because really when you're taking the same exact composition that somebody else has done, all that can really change is the way you post-process it and the weather conditions. And we had beautiful color, but we didn't really have much interest going on weather condition wise. And I'm just never sentimentally attached to those shots that I know I've seen other people take before. Probably my second favorite shot from the trip is this one from Dragonair. I've seen a lot of shots from down by the water, but the one thing that I'd never really seen was, for one, I've never seen anybody standing out on this point. Thomas, our guide, he crawled up there. Kind of a sketchy place to stand, by the way, so kids don't try this at home. And then we got this amazing light poke through for a second, illuminate all the rock, and really create just this nice hazy feel to the shot. I crawled down below where it was incredibly slick, and normally you can't even get down here because the waves are usually lapping up on these rocks. But I found this puddle. I was really excited to find just this little bit of reflecting him back in the water. This is a focus stack exposure blend, which sounds harder than it is. Basically, I think it's 3 different shots for depth of field. So I believe I was shooting f/16, focus on the background, focus on the middle ground, focus on the barnacles closest to the camera. And then I take one darker shot for that sky to cover that dynamic range, because it was a pretty high dynamic range scene. One of my favorite shots of the trip, just because of the drama going on. This is a very dramatic light, dramatic scene with all the sharp angles to be able to reflect some of that back. I was really excited about. Another one of my favorite shots is probably this one, just because of the unique light that we're getting. Mass has been standing down on this particular point for probably an hour and a half, but then we had just this moment of light where we got these light rays kind of peeking through the clouds, and then kind of through some of the gaps back in the mountains at the end of the fjord. And that combination of the sun star and those interesting rays, which are not photoshopped, they're not fake, they're real, and then having him down there for scale, it just has this sense of moment. And a sense of moment is one of those things that I absolutely love in landscape photography when you can get it, because in landscape photography, so often you're photographing a static scene, but if you can get a sense of moment, a sense of like that was a fleeting moment of time, that takes just a static landscape to the next level, because the viewer can feel and recognize that that's a fleeting moment, and that makes it something special. And these light rays really do it for me. It really, really brings it to that place, and I really liked that. So those are probably my favorite shots from the trip. We came away with just an absolute ton of photos. A lot of them didn't even make it into the videos, because I was editing the videos on the road while I was still there, just in my downtime in the hotel room or in between workshops, which meant that when I'm editing the video, I also have to edit the photos that go into the video. And a lot of times I don't like to rush that stuff, because I'm traveling a long ways for these photos, and I don't want to rush the edit, because if you rush the edit, most likely you're not going to do the best job. And then once you edit it once, the likelihood of resharing it on social media is very low, because you're only going to do a little bit better. So you want to take your time on those edits. And I always feel bad when I'm rushing my photo edits. So a lot of my favorite photos I haven't even edited yet, because I'm just now getting home, just now getting settled on my real computer where I like to edit. So those are some of my favorite photos. I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about the Faroe Islands stuff. If you guys have more questions about this set of videos, leave them in the comments below, and we'll kind of continue the conversation down in the comments below. Hopefully you guys liked this set of videos. I've got a little bit of a break coming up in front of me here, so I don't know what my next photo trip actually is. It might not be for a while. So I'm home, might be going out to do some astrophotography. Maybe that'll be the next video. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and We'll catch you next time.